So, welcome to the Children's Bible in 365 Stories. We're looking at story 39, The New Prime Minister, which picks up after our last story, 38, where Joseph, who sat in prison for over 2 years, was remembered by a person he had interpreted the dreams for, and that person told the king when the king had dreams that no one understood. And Joseph came and interpreted those dreams for the king and made sense of them in a way that no one else had. So we're picking up where that leaves off to see what happened as a result of Joseph. And he never claimed credit for interpreting the dreams himself. He always gave God the credit for giving him the insight to understand what the dreams were. So let's pick up where our story leaves off. Again, the title is The New Prime Minister. And if you're following along in a Bible, we're looking at Genesis chapter 41. When the king of Egypt heard Joseph explain his dreams, he was horrified. He knew that in spite of 7 years of plentiful harvest, the 7 years of shortage that were to follow would bring famine and death. But Joseph had something more to say. "Your Majesty," Joseph went on, "may I suggest what you should do? Choose one of your men and put him in charge of all food supplies. He can supervise the storing of grain during the years of bumper crops so that there will be enough to feed everyone during the years when crops fail. Then the people won't starve." The king was pleased with Joseph and his wise advice. "You shall be that man," he announced. "You have shown how wise you are, so I shall put you in charge of everything that needs to be done in the whole of Egypt. You shall be my new prime minister." On the king's orders, Joseph was given a fine chariot, servants of his own, and rich clothes and jewels. Joseph had learned to trust God and to do his work well as a slave and even in prison. He set about his important duties in just the same way. He traveled the length and breadth of Egypt. In every city he gave orders for huge storage buildings to be put up to hold grain. 7 years of wonderful harvest brought huge quantities of grain. Joseph arranged for it to be stored all over the country. Before the 7 years up, the new storehouses were so full that even Joseph had lost count of how much grain they held. Then came the lean and hungry years, when no crops would grow. Joseph was busier than ever, selling the grain and seeing that it was fairly shared out. Soon, people living in nearby countries who were also hit by famine heard that there was grain to be had in Egypt. They traveled to Joseph to ask if they could buy grain to take it home to their own lands. That's pretty amazing. Joseph worked hard at everything he did. We know this from all the stories so far. He trusted that God would be with him, trusted that it's always on God's timetable and not ours. Because remember, he sat in prison for over 2 years. And then it took 7 years of storing up to make it through the 7 bad years. And this whole time he did the best that he could simply because he trusted God and trusted that God was going to guide him in his life and was able to do the things he was. So he went from being sold into slavery to being put at the head of a household and then thrown into prison and then freed from prison to be put over all of the land of Egypt, where he helped set things up for them to weather some very bad times. Fascinating how God works in our lives. Well, that's our story for today, but you have a good day and be safe, and we'll find out more about Joseph as we continue with our next story. Thanks.